Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by Hipchat. Bring your team to life with persistent team chat, file sharing, and integrations with the software you use. A team communication tool built for business. Hipchat is free forever, and Hipchat Plus, including video and screen sharing, is free for 6 months for the first 1,000 listeners at hipchat.com/twist. And by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform that makes it fast and easy to create a professional website, and now an online store. For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase on new accounts, go to squarespace.com and use the offer code TWIST.
I am a super fan of Kickstarter. You know this. I begged to be on the board of the company. I begged to invest. They told me no. This was years ago. Still, I am a tremendous fan of Yancey, one of the co-founders of Kickstarter. And we taped this episode at the launch festival. 12,000 people came over 3 days to Fort Mason. It was a beautiful, glorious 3 days. Where were you? If you didn't come, my God, are you crazy? Come next year. Anyway, Yancey talked about the Pebble 3 promotion, which at the time of this taping was at 10 million, and now it's at 15 million, and is the largest Kickstarter ever done. And we talk about the possibility of a $50 or $100 million Kickstarter, which is not a possibility at this point. It's an inevitability. And he talks about never going public and never selling the company, and how they explain that to investor Fred Wilson. What? You're taking a venture capitalist's money and you're never going to go public and you're never going to sell the company and you're going to base the company on making a profit, and it has made a profit every year since it's existed. This is an incredible interview with what I think is one of the 5 most important companies of our time. Let me say that again. One of the 5 most important companies of our time. It is changing the landscape for entrepreneurship. It is changing the landscape for art, movies, culture, science. Kickstarter has changed everything, let's face it. Stick with us. You're going to love this episode.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
I'm going to bring out my first guest. Yancey, I met, a couple years ago, and he had this crazy idea that y'all, the people in the world, would back other people's dreams and back other people's projects. Yancey, come on out. Please welcome Yancey from Kickstarter. Awesome. Thank you, sir. So great to be starting the conference off with a company that has launched how many successful campaigns now?
It's close to 80,000 now in almost 6 years.
80,000 projects in 6 years on the Kickstarter platform.
Yeah.
And it's been a hell of a week. We could not have timed this better, could we?
Today is 6 days since the launch of Pebble Time, the return of Eric and the Pebble team. And at this point, I think it's close to $12 million it's raised for about 60,000 backers. So that's already bigger than their first campaign was 2 years ago. And they still have another 3 weeks to go. So pretty amazing.
And that could be a $15 to $20 million Kickstarter. It's pretty much assured it will be, I think.
I would imagine so.
And that would make it the largest one?
Yeah. I mean, they had held the record for the largest project in terms of dollars for the past 2 years. Were passed last July by a project called The Coolest Cooler. But it seems they will retake that crown very soon. I would guess within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. And right before that, you did a card game called Exploding Kittens.
Yeah.
And that did how much?
That was a card game by The Oatmeal, a very beloved comic artist, and a couple of friends. They were looking to raise $10,000, and they raised, I believe, $8.8 million. So I think that counts as exceeding your goal.
I think that exceeds the goal.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
When you see these ridiculous performances, it's just out, you never anticipated this, did you?
No, not at all. I mean, I actually have a couple slides that sort of walks through what I think of as our story to date that maybe gives a sense of the scale. So this right here, this is the first ever design for Kickstarter. This is from October of 2005. So I believe this is when Facebook was launching. This is done by Kickstarter's founder, Perry Chen, my partner. He made this by cutting and pasting basically other websites together. But before Kickstarter launched, Perry was an artist. I was a rock critic. Charles Adler, our co-founder, was a graphic designer, although he was not involved at this point, clearly.
I was about to say, if he's the graphic designer, you might need to fire him.
But it started with this. This was the very first sketch of what Kickstarter looked like. Back this project, a lot of the language is already there. But the first project to be successfully funded was this one, Drawing for Dollars. This was about 5 days after the site launched, raised $35 from 3 backers. This was a huge deal. Like, we saw money actually transact on the back end. People were actually using this site. I mean, this was an enormous victory. This almost felt like Pebble feels now.
Right. You literally popped champagne and were like, people gave money to somebody else to draw something.
Yeah, I mean, for my partner Perry, he had the idea 8 years before this launch. So 8 years he'd been sitting on this, trying to make it happen. I've been involved for 4 years. So it was a long road to get to 3 backers, $35. And this is a project from a guy saying, if you give me $5, I'll draw you a picture of something. That was the project. And that still is kind of the essence of Kickstarter. Here's an idea. If you want in, we'll do it together. So that started things off, and there started to be these really unusual things happening. This is a DeLorean hovercraft that was funded during the first year. This is it at a Giants game here in San Francisco. But some really just unusual things started happening. And so those first 2 years was just a steady build of just like people discovering the platform. But this project, Double Funded Venture from Tim Schafer, was the one where it really kicked into another gear. This is February of 2012. The project had never crossed $1 million before, and then 2 projects crossed $1 million within an hour of one another. And this was the second of the 2. The first is a project called Elevation Doc. But this just sort of really kicked things off and started this run of $1 million plus campaigns. There's been close to 100 of them now that have crossed more than $1 million. That leads up to a project, a very unusual project. This is called Mine Cafoon. This is from an industrial designer, an Afghani industrial designer. And in Afghanistan, there are landmines everywhere. And the only way to clear landmines is with dogs or drones if you're the US military, or people doing it manually. So he designed this as this giant sculpture that you roll across open fields and the wind blows it and will set off a landmine if it's there. What's amazing about this was funded a couple of years ago, but this past year it became the first Kickstarter project to enter the Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection. So this is on display at MoMA now forever. There's been multiple projects in the MoMA, but none have entered the permanent collection before. So again, thinking back to that first ugly design, 3 backers, $35 for Drawing for Dollars, to see this was pretty amazing. Very similarly, this is a project, a short film called Innocente, a documentary that won an Academy Award 2 years ago for Best Documentary Short. This is the first Kickstarter project to win an Oscar. There have been 7 nominated to date. The Best Documentary category, past 2 years, has had a Kickstarter project nominated. But again, for us to start from just this simple idea and creating this system to seeing it recognized by the Academy Awards, by the Museum of Modern Art, is just wild. Last year had Reading Rainbow, a show that I grew up with, LeVar, so important in my life. To have him launch a project, be the first one to cross 100,000 backers. And then, of course, this week, having Pebble Time happen.
What's particularly interesting about the Pebble Watch is in Silicon Valley, everybody's been saying Pebble is toast. There's no way that this company will survive given the Apple Watch is going to drop any week now.
Right.
And then it comes out on Kickstarter and breaks all those records.
Yeah.
So what does that tell us about consumers, entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship?
Well, I think that it certainly says that there is space for everybody. I mean, you have the most beloved, biggest company in the world that's going to enter this market in a huge way. And here you have a company of 100 people here in the Bay that are doing it, in an independent way. And I think consumers appreciate that. I mean, at Kickstarter, we have such a big community now. It's about 2.5 million people who have backed multiple projects, and that's an early adopter crew who love supporting someone approaching something like a watch as an independent entrepreneur, not as a big company, not as some giant VC-funded entity, but as someone just trying to make something. And there's a real appreciation for that spirit. And that's a lot of what we try to stand for, and just empowering independent creators to do things on their own, to do things without the influence of money, to just make things that they want to see exist and doing it hand in hand with an audience. I mean, this is where culture is moving.
Right.
There's no question. And so, I don't know, I look at Pebble Time as just a testament to this is going to continue to work. This is not going to go away.
To me, when you see something like Pebble Time just crush those numbers like that, it kind of breaks this entrepreneurial or venture capital sort of myth that, like, listen, once Apple's in the market or Google's in the market, it's game over. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you've built this platform community system that allows a lot of these basic tenets to be, reassessed in a way.
Yeah, well, when you create, I mean, Kickstarter is a very hyper-efficient marketplace for ideas, right? And so you can look at Pebble and say, hey, there's 70,000 backers who have been a part of this to date, probably be over 100,000 by the time it's over. On an Apple scale, that may seem like a not huge number, but within the scale of an independent company, that's incredible. And here they are able to reach an audience to build a community and do so in a very efficient way that's completely direct. And you don't need all those other pieces. I mean, it's possible to exist solely hand in hand with your community and just to be, to be a sustainable business.
My God, email is just awful. When you get on those reply all chains and everybody is just dumping everything into email, and then you're a slave to your email, you're not thinking about your product, you're not thinking about your customers. Here's an easy way to solve that problem. Get Hipchat. I use Hipchat. All my companies use Hipchat. I live in Hipchat. Why? I can get a quick, instant response to discussions with a distributed team like I have at Inside, or a local team like Launch here, but I'm on the road. I take out the Hipchat app, which of course works on Android and iOS and everywhere. They have a desktop app as well, which is very solid. You can search all these different rooms, and you can set up public rooms. So when we did the Launch Festival, I set up a public room for the hackathon, public room for customer support, public room for the main stage, public room for the product hunt AMA stage. Hipchat solves all of those problems for me, and it's super, super affordable. Hipchat is, of course, free for the regular service. It can't be at that price. And their clients include Netflix, Dropbox, Salesforce, Launch, Inside. It integrates with Jira, GitHub, Bitbucket, and a bunch of other ones. In fact, we have some really interesting integrations with If This Then That and Zapier, where, like, if I publish to my blog, my RSS feed says, hey, a new blog post came out. This way, everybody on my team knows I did a new blog post. Hey, they can go comment, they can go retweet it, they can correct the spelling error, right? Those kind of automation things are very powerful, and Hipchat is awesome for doing that kind of instant notification of events, triggers that occur in the real world. Like, if this account tweets, publish it into the main room. That's a pretty powerful one too. So you can also get video and screen sharing, which I did today. Actually, I was on the phone with Blake, one of my developers, and I just said, hey, just Hipchat me some audio. We did audio in Hipchat, and we're texting in Hipchat at the same time. It was really cool. Hipchat Plus is free for the first 6 months to the first 1,000 listeners of this program, and you can go to hipchat.com/twist, hipchat.com/twist to get that first 6 months free. Okay. Let's get back to this amazing episode. Hipchat is awesome. That's all you need to know. Go try it out. You're going to love it. It will transform your organization. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode.
The movie business.
Yeah.
It seems to be recognizing the power of this now in the past year or two. I was talking to some directors just 2 years ago about it, and I said, you could probably fund your actual next movie on this. These were, legit directors. And they were kind of like, yeah, no, I don't need to do that. But now we've seen Spike Lee, the Veronica Mars movie, and what was the other one from the guy who did Jersey State? Was it?
Garden State.
Garden State, sorry. And Zach Braff. These three each did 9-10 million or something?
Yeah, they did. I mean, collectively it was a little more than that. But yeah, I mean, more than 10% of the films at Sundance the past 4 years, every year, have been Kickstarter funded. And this is where a lot of the vanguard work is happening, a lot of important work. And yeah, in the past year or two, more mainstream work has been happening. Yeah, I assume that there will continue to be breakthroughs along those lines. I assume these things will take time because there is just, people have to get used to this idea. But again, if you think about the large scale of culture and the way it operates, to me, a culture where audiences and artists have closer relationships, where there is more of a collaborative creation, where the web becomes this great equalizer, where people have direct access to people that they love, to me, there's no question that's where things are going to go. And it's just a matter of people becoming comfortable with it. But clearly, audiences are there. Audiences are waiting for this. I mean, Veronica Mars, Rob Thomas had been told no by Warner Brothers for 8 years. They would not allow him to continue the show because they did not think there was an audience for it. We finally got permission to get him to do a Kickstarter, and within 8 hours, he had raised the full budget for the movie. So for 8 years, a studio says no. In 8 hours, the fans say yes. This is going to be repeated over and over again. And I think it's incredibly positive for consumers.
Do the big movie studios come to Brooklyn and see you and talk to you, or do they just ignore you and say I hope this goes away because it's annoying?
I think they certainly know us,
but they don't come visit.
No, I don't. No, not generally. I don't know if any of them.
The directors do, though.
Yeah. Certainly the filmmakers, the artists themselves, we spend a lot of time with, and that to us that's ideal. I mean, all these things work best when it is the filmmaker that's driving it rather than a studio.
Why wouldn't a studio come to you and say, "Hey, we're not sure of the market for the 100th Marvel character or the TV show you all loved, and we'd like to test the waters with Kickstarter and just say to the public, if you want to pre-buy the tickets, etc., we'll get this going."
It's just a matter of time. I think that after Veronica Mars, we have been used to just sort of being patronizingly sort of patted on the head, and that's just how these things go. It's just you have to keep moving up the ladder and earn your seat, and I think that's right. And after Veronica Mars, certainly people started looking at us differently for the first time. A lot of the snarky internet reaction to the Zach Braff project certainly made people wonder, wait, is this something that I want to do?
Because people were like, isn't Zach rich?
Right.
Which they're kind of, he's not rich enough to fund his own movies, though. On that scale.
He may be, but that's just not the way that business operates. And again, there's this misconception that because the money is being pooled before the film is made, that it's somehow different than getting a ticket after the fact. The end result is the same, it's just a matter of sequencing. Right. And again, I just think these things take time.
Right.
And over the long term, I think that filmmakers certainly will recognize, and I think probably studios will recognize as well, that this is just a really useful way to do things.
Right.
And that fans want to be a part of films from the very beginning. It's a lot cooler.
Right.
And here's this really simple way for them to do it. And if you think about from an artist perspective, for an artist, you go through Kickstarter, you own 100% of your IP, you have total creative control, and more than 90% of all the money that moves through the system goes directly to you. There's not a better deal anywhere in the world for a creator looking to create something. But it's just a matter of this is still a new interaction that is still breaking down barriers. And we've always viewed this as something that will just take time. And we see it accelerating quite a bit. It's $1.5 billion that's moved through Kickstarter, and well over $500 million in the last 12 months alone. And so
you're on $1 billion a year run rate in terms of raising.
Not yet, but not far off.
So $500 million in the last 6 months or so?
A little more than that, but yeah.
Well, if you double that, it's $1 billion. Are you anticipating the next 6 months will be slower than the past?
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I would actually think it's going to be a little bit faster at this point.
Well, we'll see.
You guys only make 5%.
Correct.
The App Store makes 30%.
Correct.
YouTube takes 45%.
Correct.
When I first heard you were taking 5%, I said, you'll never be able to make this a profitable business. It's too low, because you also have the credit card fees, but that comes outside of the 5%.
Correct.
Why did you pick such a low number? Why not 10%? It seemed to me like 10, 15% would be a better number. How did you come up with 5%?
Well, I mean, honestly, it was just low and round. I mean, I think we picked that number a couple of years before the site even launched, but it just seemed fair. It just seemed fair. I mean, we think that we're providing a service and a very valuable one. And certainly, creators earn well more than 5% by using Kickstarter. But I don't know. I just think that seems fair. And for us, when we think about things from perspective of like, we've been a business in the black for over 5 years. We're not trying to amass huge amounts of money. We're simply trying to be sustainable and to provide real value to the creative community and to artists around the world. And so, to me, having as a basic tenet that more than 90% of every dollar that goes through our platform goes directly to an artist, that's positioning ourselves well for the future. I think that's understanding what's going to be important to consumers. And I think for fans, people are going to care about that. Like, you want to know that the money you're spending goes directly to the creator.
It feels just absurdly generous. But now, if I were to do math, I'm not that good at it, but I'm going to guess you're spending about $1 million a month running this company. You got 100 people there now or something. This has become a phenomenally profitable business or a very profitable business? Which one?
I'll just say profitable.
Profitable.
Yeah.
Because you're known as being a little on the quirky side, let's say, as a venture company. Because if you were to value this, you would clearly be a unicorn worth billions of dollars, but you're not brought up in the unicorn discussions very often because I believe you have publicly stated you're not going to go public and you're never going to sell the company.
That's right.
Kind of breaks the heart of venture capitalists.
Yeah, well, we're fortunate that Fred Wilson, who's speaking on Wednesday, you can ask Fred about this, is our one venture investor and is someone that believes very deeply in the mission. And we were very clear about this mentality from the beginning, and he was down. I mean, for us,
take me to that moment.
Yeah.
You're with Fred.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of things go public, the Twitter, the Zynga, the Tumblr, the Yahoo. He's had a couple of Etsy, a lot of good things going on. And you say to him, we'll take your money, but we're not going public or selling, which basically means he's going to give you money and never get a return. How does it work?
Yeah, that was a conversation that my partner Perry had with Fred.
What's the response?
And Fred said he understood. Fred wrote a blog post when Perry stepped away as CEO about 1.5 years ago. Fred wrote a blog post recounting this conversation and saying that he actually didn't really believe us at the time.
Right.
But now he did. But still, felt great about it. But yeah, it's just the mentality that we've had about wanting to build something that will last and feeling like the sorts of decisions going towards an exit might be prioritizing ourselves personally, but would not be for the betterment of our mission and would probably result in a worse company overall. Like, I don't know, Perry is returned to being a full-time artist and being executive chair of Kickstarter. If someday, if there's another chapter for me, I will become a writer again. Charles is a designer again. It's like, this is just who we are. And so, we believe that the value that's created from the business should be shared by our entire community, which is why so much of the funding goes to them, and also our employees and stakeholders. But there, the goals would be very traditional ones, like, say, profit sharing or dividends, things like that. The way companies have been run for many, many years, we think can work quite effectively for a sustainable, profitable business like ours.
When is the $100 million Kickstarter going to occur? You must talk about this internally because there's a chart of, the $35, the $3 million,
right.
Now the 12, and certainly there'll be a 20 this year or so. So we're kind of can see the 20 pretty clearly. 4 years to get to 20. No, how many years to 25? 6?
Overall?
Yeah, how many years from the $35 to this year?
That's almost 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
So 20 to 100, how long?
I don't know, maybe a couple years.
2 years,
yeah, what would that be?
What's your guess? Would it be electronics? Would it be a movie? What do you think?
I would probably hope for a film.
Yeah.
Just like that'd be a great premiere, that'd be a great event. But we'll see. I mean, certainly the product design sorts of things have a lot of blockbuster potential. I mean, that's an interesting category where the success rates are lower than other categories. Success rates of closer to 25-30% of those projects meet their goal, but they have a blockbuster potential to where if you click, you go huge. And so that would certainly make sense as a category where that could happen. The other category we haven't talked about that is extremely dominant is games. That's actually where most of the money happens on Kickstarter. It's about $320 million to games. Interestingly, the majority of that money is to tabletop and board games rather than video games.
Yeah.
This is a market that I think people would have completely written off. But again, you have this hyper-efficient system that steps in where there's an enormous fan community that doesn't reach the scale of a large corporation finding interesting.
Yeah, it's not worth it to that big company.
It's not worth it, but if you're just a creator, someone that wants to make a great card game or board game, just has an idea, it's something that's quite accessible, and you're able to reach a very rabid audience.
What is the easiest way to make a website? It's Squarespace. It's elegant, it's beautiful, and it works on mobile. It's flawless. I love Squarespace, and I use it every day. In fact, the launch incubator, the launch fund, the launch festival, every time I have a new aspect or new brand for our company, I say just pop up a Squarespace. Pop up a Squarespace. It's so easy. And you know what? My chief of staff, my Emmy Award-winning producer, anybody on my team, the research team, they can add pages to the site. So when we were doing the launch festival, I was like, hey, put up a page for parties. Hey, put up a page for the chat room. Hey, put up a page for this. Put up a page for that. It was so simple and easy. It was the easiest thing we've ever done using Squarespace. And by the way, it starts at only $8 a month and comes with a free domain if you buy the service for a year, which is, why wouldn't you? It's so affordable. Cover pages allow you to set up one-page presence in minutes. Commerce, every website comes with free commerce. I forgot about that because I don't really sell product. But if you have a friend who has a store, my God, you'll be up and running so quickly and easily. Simple, powerful, and beautiful. Start a free trial with no credit card. That's how confident they are. They don't ask for the credit card. And after a free trial, you can use the promo code TWIST to get 10% off your first purchase to show your support. Go ahead and thank @Squarespace on the Twitter. They're a great company. They keep adding features to this product, and it's super elegant and super awesome. I love Squarespace. I can't say enough nice things about the company because I use it. Super simple. I use it. What more do you need to know? If I use it, then you should use it. It's a great product. It's clean. It's efficient. It's cheap. And your designs are going to look great. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Thank you, Squarespace.
Let me ask, how many people in the audience, raise your hand if you've actually backed a Kickstarter. Raise your hand nice and high if you've backed a Kickstarter. That's at least 2/3, if not more, of the audience have participated in this. Tell me as an entrepreneur how you feel now versus those days when you made that ugly, really ugly page and then had this like just anemic $35 thing happen. Like, is it more magical now or is it more magical then? And how do you look at it as an entrepreneur? Like, back then you had to stay delusional. Now you have to stay humble. How do you look at the world now?
Well, I mean, I became CEO about 14 months ago. So in the past, I've been head of community, head of communications, and Charles and Perry and I had run the company together, but I became CEO January 1st of last year, and so I'm still on a rapid learning curve.
Yeah.
That is full of real challenges, but also just moments of amazing achievement. For me personally, I think this might be the most fun time I've had because. I feel like the company is really hitting its stride, and we're becoming ourselves as this 100-person entity rather than a 20-person entity, a 70-person entity, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited for what we're going to do this year. The product and the service are going to, I think, improve and evolve quite dramatically.
Okay, let's talk about that because. There's a lot of complaints about Kickstarter. Anything successful is going to have its detractors. So the number one thing is, I think, you have to reach your goal. Is that written in stone, or is that something that you might reevaluate?
No, that's written in stone. That's written in stone. That's a
Why?
great rule. It's a great rule. I mean, it's intended as a form of protection for both the backer and the creator. So the whole concept is that you're proposing idea, you're saying how much money you need to execute it properly, And if you don't reach that goal, then you're not obligated to go through with it. So you can go on to the next thing. So not reaching your goal is also information. And information that is certainly not what someone wants, but is incredibly helpful. And All or Nothing also provides an incredible system integrity. The notion that no money changes hands unless a quorum of our community have agreed means that there is a wisdom of the crowds that's happening on every project. And we think that's incredibly important and incredibly powerful and absolutely a part of our system for the long term.
Okay, so now the next thing is you curate every single project, unlike, let's say, Indiegogo, where anything can go up, or other platforms, Tilt, anything can go up, white label, whatever. Is that written in stone, that you have to put the stamp on everything?
Well, it's not so much as a stamp as, we believe that trust and that quality matter.
Right.
And especially in a user-generated platform like this, where money is transacting, where our reputation is on the line with every project, that it is important that there are some systems. Now, the system is not, nearly as intense as people may suggest. I wrote a blog post just a week or two ago that explains how the system works. We made a good evolution of it last year, where we spent about a year building an algorithm, a machine learning algorithm that analyzed how our team of project specialists had looked at hundreds of thousands of projects and used it to generate a predictive model for each new project that it looked at. And so based on that, about 30% of projects are able to have a green light and launch without talking to us. The other 70% are given another look. But I think that's important. I think that when people think of Kickstarter, they think of quality.
Right.
I think that we are perceived as a premium brand. And those are things that we want to continue to protect. I mean, those are things that I think are very valuable.
Yeah, and so do consumers look at, is one of the issues here that consumers look at Kickstarter, since a lot of good things have happened there, as bulletproof, or do they still look at it as, I'm donating, I'm funding a dream, and how have you kind of managed that expectation? Because there was a period in time where this was looking a little bit shaky, because anybody who is doing one of these projects, any entrepreneur, is 6 months, half the entrepreneurs are 6 months behind. Some number of them deliver a product that is below expectations. That's happened many times on the platform. How did you sort of get past that and message it?
Well, we take steps on a daily basis of varying levels of volume that ensure that people know that this is not bulletproof. When we felt, as you're saying, that people were viewing the system too optimistically, we made a quite dramatic announcement in October 2012 with a blog post called Kickstarter is Not a Store, where we launched a series of new rules prohibiting photorealistic renderings, product simulations that would seem to suggest that basically anything that felt like you were trying to dupe a backer into believing something was further along than it was. And we took a lot of flack for that.
Yeah, because people are like, I want to make a simulation. I want to show it in the real world. You said, hey, if you're going to show it in the real world, you have to put simulation, or you just can't do it.
Yeah, well, it wasn't even that you could write a simulation. It's just like, you got to show the real thing. Like, show the warts. People will appreciate it more. But we took that hard stance.
So that means, I just want to make sure we make this totally clear. If I haven't made the final version of the Pebble, if it's just a 3D printed, I have to show the 3D printed version, which is kind of ganky.
Right.
And it's not going to get the response that the polished version, where the molds have been made already, or whatever.
Correct. I mean, you could show. We like people showing the history of how something has come to be. So you could start by showing the 3D and work up to where it's going to go. Talk about what you hope for it, but just to ground things in reality as much as you can. And we work with people on that. I mean, we try to take a very common sense approach to these things, but there are certain principles that we're trying to uphold. And again, these are things that in the short term cost us money, for sure.
Right.
In the long term, they build trust and demonstrate us as a company of integrity, and that is what's going to matter in the long term. Having a short-term focus on a market like this one, I believe, is the wrong move.
So written in stone, basically. Now the next piece is, I want to do a party for my, my daughter's kindergarten wants to have a fundraiser.
Right.
And everybody says, when they do this at my daughter's school, let's kickstart it.
Right.
Like, let's take a Xerox of it, or let's
Right.
Google it, even if they're using a different search engine.
Right.
But you cannot kickstart what everybody calls a kickstart. is that written in stone that I could never do a fundraiser amongst my friends and be very clear that this is like a Kickstarter light or Kickstarter personal project, or it's a fundraising kind of a thing?
Well, I mean, our focus has always been quite deliberate. I mean, you can imagine as we created this entire system and really pioneered this entire concept. We did it knowing that this could be applied to anything. But for us, our hearts and our passions were focused on creators, and we are a creative organization. I mean, that is what we're really grounded in and rooted in, and will be for the long term. And so, if I think about projects like that, I like those projects.
Tilt has something very nice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, Tilt does that. GoFundMe has a lot of success with that.
But that's not you.
But that's not us. That's just not what we're here for.
So written in stone, boom.
Yeah, it's just hard to fit to me as I think about serving filmmakers and artists and musicians and game designers.
Okay, so I'm pulling the string here.
Yeah.
And the last piece I can think of is there's this wonderful site called Patreon, which does ongoing support of artists. Mm-hmm. Boy, does that seem like that is completely in line with what Kickstarter does. Is it written in stone that you wouldn't do an ongoing one? Or is that written in pencil?
I really like Patreon. I really respect them. And Jack's partner in Pamplemousse, Natalie Dawn, did a very successful Kickstarter project. But certainly, we see a lot of creators going to Patreon after their Kickstarter for just like an ongoing support. And I think that's great. I mean, I don't look at that business and think about wanting to take that on. I feel very happy that exists. I mean, we honestly I was in London earlier this week or last week talking about the future of arts in Britain, and there's a big debate happening about public funding of the arts there. Yeah. And our position is not that. I mean, I think we are possibly one of the largest arts funders in the world at this point.
For sure, you are.
Certainly in the U.S. But we don't feel triumphant about that. Like, I would rather there be a lot more options for artists. Like, a diversity of funding sources, a diversity of options, I think is incredibly important.
So continuous funding is definitely not on the table, or maybe it is. It's on the table. Okay, that's all I need to know. I can tell by how long you think about it. That's like a poker tell right there.
Yeah.
You looked at the ceiling when I said it.
Yeah, you're the pro.
You did look at the ceiling. No, so is it on the table or not?
Listen, I think a lot about what is it that we can do for creators, and we certainly see a number of areas where our product doesn't provide the support that's needed. And part of it's just because we haven't done a good enough job building the product, and it's like a part of it that we feel embarrassed about and really want to fix. Right. Other parts where it's like, should that be a part of Kickstarter or not?
Feels like it to me. Feels like it to a lot of people, I think. So what else is coming then? What area are you looking at? What are you thinking about?
Well, I mean, one of the interesting things that we did last year that I hope to continue is we did some really cool partnerships. Two of the biggest were with MoMA and with iTunes. So if you go to iTunes/Kickstarter, you will find a iTunes curated showcase of Kickstarter-funded films. I hope to see that go to other categories as well. And MoMA and the MoMA Design Store had a Kickstarter collection of 30 pieces that were funded through Kickstarter that are for sale there. And so we are hearing from really amazing institutions like this all the time that are looking to showcase great independently created works. And so it's the same with the film festival we do every year, where any chance that we can use our brand and our umbrella to shine a light on things that people wouldn't come across anyway, that's something that is very meaningful to us.
So a Kickstarter film festival or a Kickstarter Coachella-like music festival, that could be interesting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you think about about 25% of our staff works directly with creators on a daily basis.
So you know them.
So we know them, and this is
asking
where
them to come for the weekend and play some songs would be easy.
And this is how we think about the platform. I mean, there's a way. I mean, we kind of look at the platform in a way as like this is a preview of culture 6 to 12 months from now.
Right.
Like we're seeing now the things that will be coming out later. I think about there's this one designer in New York, this guy named Adam Harvey, who's about to launch his second project soon, that does this anti-surveillance clothing, like this cloak that can't be seen by a drone, a headpiece that protects you from facial recognition technology. but like
Can we get that for
anti-surveillance
when Glenn Beck
fashion.
comes on? We need that for Glenn Beck's talk.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
But things like that you look at and you're like, right, this is the vanguard of culture. This is what's emerging. And so we have a big team of people that are thinking about that. And a recent hire who joined the company a few weeks ago is a woman who's a curator here at the SF MoMA who's going to help us think through these things. So like we really deeply care and focus on the cultural impact of these projects, working directly with these creators.
So
we are an arts organization.
Getting them more exposure in a group setting. I mean, can you imagine a Kickstarter store, like an Apple store? Have you imagined that?
Sure. You imagine everything.
Okay, take me to the moment where you imagined a Kickstarter store. What would that look like?
Well, it would have to be called "This is not a Kickstarter store."
Okay.
No, I mean, there's just, you know what I think about when I think about that? I think about a very early project, a guy named Octant, this one-man band, who was part of a project made a theremin wristwatch. So theremin is like a 1930s instrument where you put your fingers around this electromagnetic field and it creates this screaming whale sound.
Right.
And so if you think about the Pebble or Apple Watch, there's a guy who made a theremin watch.
Right.
And they're handmade. He made 5 of them. Whenever I've imagined a Kickstarter store, I imagine that in a glass case and you read about this
kind
thing.
of the Kickstarter museum.
And you just hold it there and you're like, if Brian Eno ever comes here, he's allowed to buy this and no one else.
Right. There's like 4 people.
But I don't know. You just think about like just a showcase for this work that gets made. Because if you think about any creator's challenge, I mean, they have something they're really passionate about that they want to create. To do that, they probably need some money, and they also need some people that want to listen. And we provide both of those to a degree that is unprecedented on the web, or maybe even in humanity. I mean, the scale of the internet plus this model is obviously pretty unprecedented. And there's just so much that we can provide there.
Yeah, see, that's, to me, you guys actually aggregating audience to deliver it, because I would say on the average Kickstarter, what, 10, 20, 30% of the users come from Kickstarter, and then 60, 70%?
It's about 30%, I would say. I mean, think of it this way. Like, it's $1.5 billion that's moved through Kickstarter, 80,000 successfully funded projects, like crazy numbers. But 8 million backers. Now, when I think about 8 million people, that's insane to me. Again, I think back to Drawing for Dollars, 3 backers, $35. That's wild. But think about 8 million people on like Facebook scale, and you're like, this is tiny. And so if you think about the potential of that, and of how many people I believe will be excited to be a part of the creation of, a new movie, a book they're going to love, a park in their neighborhood, I believe that we are at the very, very beginning of this.
What about equity? Because Naval will be speaking tomorrow. He's going to be launching some new stuff. And I talked on CNBC this morning about non-accredited investors getting equity in projects. This comes up all the time, and you guys are very quick to squash, we're not going to be an equity platform. Why not?
Well, I don't think it's a good match with our model. Because if you think about the sorts of projects that are funded on Kickstarter, these are generally not good investments. These are just an idea that someone wants to see exist. And backers are becoming a part of them because they feel similar, like, this is cool, $25, I'm in. And so I like the simplicity of that thought process and the immediacy of it. And I like the removal of the need for profitability or generating revenue from a piece of art. Because if you think about how a movie studio works, quite rightly they think of things as a business, and they're looking to greenlight projects that they believe will produce a return that makes it worth their while. Again, that makes total sense for them to do. However, it shrinks the funnel to like 20 ideas a year.
Yeah.
And so, to me, that is something we're trying to correct. And so adding a desire for profitability to these projects, I think would be quite contrarian to what the purpose of the platform is.
You'll start making superhero films.
Sure.
Instead of making
I'm sure that market will be quite successful, and that there will be a mix of hits and misses that occur there, and we'll watch that as spectators along with everyone else. But I don't know. That's just not, to me, doesn't click with what it is we're trying to achieve.
Now, what about people not delivering? Because it seems like you've had a couple close calls or under-delivering. And then Indiegogo certainly has had some fraud problems. Have you had fraud on the platform, and what percentage is it, and how do you manage it?
No, I mean, there haven't been widespread issues with this. it's not a system that will ever have a 100% success rate, and we try to communicate that as often as we can. Because you are supporting the creation of something new.
Right.
So for us, there's a few things that we do on an ongoing basis that we think are incredibly important. Number one is just all or nothing funding. Again, you are trusting the public to make discerning decisions about what projects they support. We believe strongly that the public has a good eye for this, and that by gating the release of funding to a threshold being crossed is the single best safety mechanism that there can be. Our entire system is built off of this and will be until the end of time. Amen.
And
so that's
but Indiegogo doesn't.
Yes.
And so is there a signaling thing going on where Indiegogo gets the sort of weaker projects and you get the stronger ones?
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. I think all or nothing is one. I think another's just the sort of checks that we do. So the fact that we do have a team that's invested in looking at projects before they launch. Now, we're not doing intense background checks or things like that, but we're pretty smart about this.
What about
we know how to spot things that are problematic.
What about this thing that one founder was telling me about, where, and it was years ago, people were funding their own projects, a little bit seeding them. How do you keep somebody from creating the optics? I mean, it's impossible to do on a Pebble scale, but on a small scale, you could certainly get 20 people a day, 30 people the next day. Kind of gets harder after that. Have you had people try that trick, and how'd you catch them?
Yeah,
How do you catch
them?
Because it's mom's same last name on all the cards?
No, it's a little more sophisticated than that. But yeah, our integrity team catches those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, listen, those are things that, again, if we were to take a short-term view, we would say, we should allow that to happen because it allows us to make more money by projects hitting their goal. And certainly we want projects to reach their goal. But long-term, it's most important that the system have integrity. And so, yeah, if we catch things like that, we will step in and stop them.
Should our government be funding the arts? Should the government in the UK be funding the arts? Now that this platform exists in the world, I mean, we have a lot of issues to handle. This has always been a controversial issue. If PBS or NPR or whatever arts funding is going to exist, you've kind of proven that it doesn't have to come from the government. Should that be a piece that the government should just shut down and say, hey, look, Kickstarter and other projects have this on lockdown, and it's a fairer process. It's not a democratic process when we give the government our money and then they choose who to give it to, whereas Kickstarter is. What do you personally believe?
I personally believe that both should exist, because I think that if it is solely up to a Kickstarter system and up to public voting, there will be a lot of trendiness, a lot of people this is just what's hot right now, so this is what's happening, but you lose sight of the canon. You lose sight of forms that might not be hip for a given period of time, but are no less important as a result. I don't know how much opera there would be in the world if this were to occur, but this is something that has an important legacy and I believe should be preserved. Where I think that public funding for the arts has great success is protecting the canon of supporting and upholding existing works, making sure there's a shared and understood cultural history. For creating contemporary works, I think public arts funding is a bit spottier, which is just, it's hard to do because you're trying to check a lot of different boxes in deciding what you're going to fund. A mix, I think, is what's going to make the most sense. Because there is a lot of more esoteric or harder forms of art or creativity that are not going to get Twitter and Facebook in a positive rage. You're not going to see $8.5 million like Exploding Kittens for the creation of a new ballet. That does not mean that ballet is less important, far from it. And I think that there does need to be an additional control.
Let me ask you the question that most people told me would result in your demise, which was when Pebble launches the new Pebble, or Ouya launches the next Ouya, they will roll their own Kickstarter. And certainly the biggest video game in history of crowdfunding, I believe.
StarCraft?
Well, was that funded by the...
It was first Kickstarter.
First Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But there was another one, I can't remember the name of it, that did 70 million or something.
I think that's StarCraft.
Yeah. So how did you get Pebble to do 3.0 on there? Because they raised venture capital funding from Charles River Ventures, George Zachary, CRV, and everybody told me that there's no way they'll go back into Kickstarter. Why would they give them the 5%? The margin is whatever. How did you get them back on the platform? And then why has that not turned out to be the thing that kills Kickstarter, as everybody said it would?
Well, I have a great relationship with Eric, the founder of Pebble. Great guy. We got to know each other very well over the years. And they came to us.
Yeah.
I mean, they came to us saying that, they were looking for a way to reach their community and to reach the public, and that we're the best way there is to do that. I mean, we more than earn our 5%. And there's a point a couple of years ago where it seemed like maybe like a white label thing would be the deal, but brand is important. And we have a very strong, powerful brand, a very strong brand. And so people become a part of Kickstarter because they want to be associated with that.
Right.
And they know that we provide value, and we demonstrate it on a daily basis. And so, I mean, this is actually the past 6 months has been a period, a lot of people returning and doing projects again. And that makes me feel very proud, because it means that, that's like your net promoter score or whatever.
It
coming
is.
back and returning, and we're
Would you come
very
back and
strong
kickstart
sales.
again? Yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is yes. The answer is it takes them like 18 months or 2 years for them to be at their next project, to be in the creative cycle again, but they do. And so I take great pride in that.
And didn't Sony do something recently? Was it on your platform or somebody else's? But have big companies started doing it yet?
We tell them no.
You tell them no. The big companies. You say you don't need to.
Well, we just say, like, I don't know. I don't think that would be a positive thing for the platform.
That's very diplomatic. You'd be a great bouncer.
All right.
All right, everybody, give it up for Yancey and Kickstarter. What an
Thank you, guys.
amazing talk and so honest. Congratulations on all your success.